Every night, at 9:40, after the last elevator ding and the last forced smile from visiting hours, the little girl curled up in the same blue plastic chair outside oncology and waited for a man who almost never came. By the time the nurses started whispering about her, most of them had already decided what the story was. Bad mother, broken home, one more child learning too early that adults disappear. Only Elena Marlowe didn't believe that version. Elena had cleaned St. Catherine Mercy Hospital for 11 years. Long enough to know that every floor had its own silence after dark. Maternity carried tired joy. Intensive care carried fear, trying not to breathe too loudly. Oncology carried the sound of people bargaining with time. She worked evenings from 4 to midnight, 5 nights a week, and moved through hallways with the invisible authority of someone who touched every corner of the building while nobody important ever remembered her name. She wiped rails, emptied bins, polished nurses' stations, and made family rooms look less desperate than they felt. Most people thanked her without looking at her. Some did not thank her at all. She did not take it personally. Invisible people heard more truth than anyone else. At 46, Elena lived in a narrow duplex with a yellow porch light and too many plants she kept forgetting to water. Her husband had died 9 years earlier in a warehouse accident. Her son Marcus was 22 and worked nights stocking shelves at a grocery store across town. They loved each other. They were simply tired at different hours. Most weeks, they passed in the kitchen like people sharing grief by schedule. The first time Elena noticed the girl was a Wednesday in March. She was maybe 8, wearing a gray hoodie with one sleeve stretched longer than the other and sneakers that had once been white. A paperback book sat upside down in her lap. Elena paused beside the waiting room trash can and smiled. Reading or hiding? The girl looked up, startled, then turned the book the right way around. Both, she said. Elena laughed softly. Fair answer. A nurse passed by and muttered, almost casually, "She's been here since 7. Mother's probably downstairs smoking again." The nurse kept walking, but the girl's face changed. Not angry, embarrassed. That was the first thing Elena noticed. Children who are truly abandoned often grow loud around it. They become defensive, restless, watchful in a different way. This girl went still, as if shame had reached her before Elena had. The second thing Elena noticed was that the child never once asked for her mother. Not that night. Not the next one. Not the one after that, when Elena found her again in the same blue chair at 10:05, fighting sleep. "What's your name, sweetheart?" Elena asked. "Ruby." "Elena," she said, tapping her own chest. "You waiting for somebody?" Ruby nodded. "My dad." The answer came too quickly to be invented. "Is he upstairs?" Elena asked. Ruby hesitated. "Kind of." That stayed with Elena longer than it should have. The staff built a whole lazy mythology around the girl. Her mother was unstable. Her family was complicated. Social work had probably already been called. Nobody knew anything for sure, but certainty had never been a requirement for judgment. Elena started bringing Ruby small things she could get away with. An extra apple juice from the family fridge, a packet of crackers left untouched on a patient tray, a purple pen abandoned at the nurse's station. Ruby accepted everything with the careful politeness of a child who had learned gifts usually cost something later. "What are you reading tonight?" Elena asked on Friday. Ruby held up the book. "It's about a horse." "Any good?" Ruby shrugged. "I think so. I've read the same page 3 times." "Why the same page?" Ruby glanced toward the elevator. "Because that's when I hear the footsteps." Elena followed her eyes. No one came. That was the moment the whole thing shifted inside her. A child abandoned by one parent does not usually train herself to listen for one specific set of footsteps. A child who's being promised something over and over does. If this already feels like the kind of story that hurts before it explains itself, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what do you think is worse for a child being left behind, or waiting for an adult who keeps promising they'll come back? That same night, Elena asked the charge nurse, what room is her family in? The nurse, distracted and tired, answered without looking up. 614. Mothers admitted, ovarian cancer, rough case. Rough case. And the father? Elena asked. The nurse shrugged. Says he stays nights. I barely see him. Elena frowned. You've met him once or twice. Tall guy. Tall guy. Baseball cap. Quiet. Room 614 belonged to a woman named Marissa Vale, and Elena knew that because she had changed the linens there twice and emptied the bins every night for nearly 2 weeks. Marissa was too young for that floor. Mid-30s, maybe. Thin hands, bright eyes, still trying to keep the room human. There was never a man in the room when Elena cleaned. No jacket. No overnight bag. No coffee cup. No evidence of a husband camping beside the bed. Only absence arranged neatly enough to look temporary. The next Monday, Elena found Ruby asleep in the chair with her forehead pressed to the window and the book open on the floor. "Ruby," she said softly. The girl woke with a start. "What time is it?" "Too late for little girls to be waiting alone in hospitals." Ruby rubbed her eyes. "He said he'd be here before 9. Elena sat beside her. "Does he always say that?" Ruby stared at her shoes. "Mostly." "Where does he tell you he is?" Elena asked. Ruby answered without looking up. "Upstairs with Mom, or downstairs with the insurance people, or talking to the doctors. It changes." A tiny nod, not abandonment, Elena thought then. Shame. Panic. Collapse. "When was the last time you actually saw your dad go into your mom's room?" she asked. Ruby thought for a long time, then whispered, "I don't remember." Elena stood outside room 614 later that night with a stack of folded towels in her arms and watched Marissa sleep while Ruby's backpack sat in the corner chair beside unfinished homework and a packet of crayons. A child should not have to keep a school bag in a cancer room like she was commuting between childhood and catastrophe. The next evening, Elena did something she rarely did. She asked the front desk clerk to check visitor logs. "Off the record," she said. The clerk sighed, typed for 10 seconds, and frowned. No badge scanned for Caleb Vale in 6 days. 6 days. Ruby had waited 6 nights. At 9:32, Elena found her again. Awake this time, but not reading, just listening to the elevator. "Why do you wait out here instead of in your mom's room?" Elena asked. Ruby's answer came after a long pause. "Because if I stay in there, she keeps asking where he is." Elena felt her chest tightened. "And you don't know what to say?" Ruby shook her head. "And if I stay out here, maybe when he comes, I can tell him before she asks." That sentence nearly broke Elena in half. Not because it was dramatic, but because it was practical. Because it sounded like something no hetero should ever know how to do. That night Elena went to social work. Not with outrage, with facts. Young child waiting alone nightly. Father absent from logs. Mother critically ill. Housing unclear. Possible financial crises. Emotional neglect, if not physical danger. Mara Jensen, the overnight social worker, listened carefully and only asked one question. "Do you think the father is dangerous?" Elena considered that. "I think he's drowning," she said, "and children get pulled under by drowning adults all the time." At 10:08 that same night, Caleb Vale finally appeared. Elena recognized him instantly. Tall, hollow-cheeked, dark jacket, baseball cap in his hands like he no longer had the energy to wear it. He stepped off the elevator, saw Ruby half asleep in the blue chair, and closed his eyes the way people do when they realize the worst version of themselves has been waiting for them in public. Elena was already standing when he reached the chairs. "Mr. Vale." He looked at her. Guarded at once. "Yeah, I'm Elena. I work here." He nodded once. "Okay. She's been waiting for you every night." His jaw tightened. "I know." "Do you?" Elena asked. Elena asked. That hit harder than she intended. He glanced at Ruby, then away. "You don't know what's going on?" Elena folded her arms. "Then tell me." For a second she thought he might leave. Instead, he sat down opposite his sleeping daughter and covered his face with both hands. When he finally spoke, the words came in pieces. He had been driving overnight deliveries, app rides, and pharmacy runs for cash. He had been sleeping in the car between shifts. Their insurance had stalled. The appeal was frozen. Bills were stacking faster than he could even open them. He had told Marisa he was handling it. He had told Ruby he was just downstairs. He had told himself that one good day, one approved form, one break would let him walk back into room 614 with a solution instead of another apology. Then the days kept passing, he said. Elena said nothing, because now she understood the ugliest part. He had not abandoned them. He had simply become the kind of broken that lies because the truth feels too humiliating to say out loud. She waits here because I told her I'd be back. Before she got scared, he whispered. Then I kept making her wait because I couldn't stand going in there and telling my wife I still hadn't fixed it. At some point, during his confession, Ruby had woken up. She sat very still, listening. Dad. Caleb turned so fast it looked painful. Ruby's lower lip trembled. I'm not mad because we don't have money. He shut his eyes. Ruby took a shaky breath. I'm mad because you keep leaving me here by myself. That sentence did what no accusation could have done. It stripped every excuse off him. Caleb pulled her into his arms and held on like a man trying to stop something from leaving through his own ribs. The next part was not magical. That Mathared, there was no miracle donor, no television speech that fixed the world by the next commercial break. There was paperwork. Emergency grants, child support services, a hospital hardship fund, a church apartment 3 blocks away, 4 families in treatment crisis, a patient finance supervisor who found one appeal form filed under the wrong number and pushed it faster than anyone thought possible. And there was Elena, doing what invisible people do best. Quietly holding the pieces in place long enough for other people to stop pretending they were not breaking. Marisa knew more than Caleb thought she knew. 2 nights later, when Elena changed the room bin, Marisa looked at her and said, he thinks if he smiles before he talks, I won't hear the fear in it. Elena froze. Marisa gave the faintest smile. But I hear everything. Why don't you say that to him? Elena asked softly. Marisa turned her face toward the window, because he's the only thing still moving. And when one person in a family is running on fumes, sometimes the others pretend not to smell the fire. Over the next 10 days, Caleb started doing the one thing he had been avoiding most, telling the truth in small, survivable pieces. To the finance office, to social work, to Ruby, to Marisa. Not everything at once, but enough to stop making them wait in different kinds of darkness. Ruby stopped sleeping in the blue chair after that. She stayed in room 614 with headphones and coloring books, while volunteers rotated through the ward. Sometimes she still looked toward the elevator, but not with the same desperate listening. One night, she asked Elena, do grown-ups lie because they're mean? Elena leaned against the wall, thinking. Sometimes, she said, but sometimes they lie because they're scared, and scared people can still hurt you, even when they love you. Ruby thought about that longer than a child should have needed to. Bilat April, the church apartment was ready. It had second-hand furniture, thin curtains, and a kitchen table with one wobbling leg. To Caleb and Ruby, it looked like rescue wearing ordinary clothes. When Elena dropped off 2 grocery bags from the staff collection, she found Ruby standing in the middle of the living room, turning in a slow circle. It smells weird, the girl sighed. Caleb almost apologized. Elena beat him to it. That's called possibility, she said. Takes a little getting used to. Marisa died in early May. Not suddenly, not peacefully enough to make the story easier. But she died knowing Ruby was sleeping in a bed instead of a hospital chair, and knowing Caleb had finally stopped pretending everything was under control. At the memorial service, Caleb stood at the back after everyone else had gone and watched Ruby place a folded drawing beside her mother's photograph. 3 stick figures, 1 crooked sun. The words, "When Mom comes home," written at the top in large, shaky letters. He cried then with the stunned violence of a man who had postponed his own grief so long it came all at once. Elena stood near the church doors and looked away, giving him the one mercy grief asks most often. Privacy. Summer arrived anyway, because it always does. Caleb took the first steady job he was offered, day maintenance at the hospital annex. Not because it paid well, because pride had finally become more expensive than honesty. Ruby started summer reading classes through the library program and told Elena one afternoon that the church apartment had a bathtub big enough to be a pirate ship if you did not care about facts. That was the first truly childish thing Elena had heard from her in months. The blue plastic chair outside oncology stayed empty after Marissa died. Most nights Elena walked past it without slowing. Some nights, she still stopped for a second anyway. Not because she missed the sadness that had lived there, because she knew what that chair had held. Not abandonment, not irresponsibility. The terrible space between love and collapse, where adults start lying because they cannot bear the shame of being unable to save the people they love. In September, Ruby visited the floor with Caleb and handed Elena a folded drawing. This one showed two women, one tall with a mop, one small with a braid. Above them, in shaky letters, Ruby had written, "She saw me." Elena kept that drawing in her locker behind a spare roll of trash liners and a bottle of disinfectant spray. Because in the end, that was what had mattered most. Not that she uncovered the truth, that she refused the easy lie everyone else had found more comfortable. People in hospitals liked simple stories. The selfish mother, the absent father, the brave patient, the saintly nurse. Simple stories helped everyone keep moving. But the truth Elena had learned over 11 years was uglier and more human than that. Most people were not villains. Most were just frightened, ashamed, exhausted, and bad at telling the truth before their damage spilled onto someone smaller. Months later, Denise from Patient Finance asked Elena why she had gotten involved at all. "Most people would have minded their own business," she said. Elena shrugged and wiped down the break room counter. "Waiting children are my business." She meant it more literally than that. In buildings built around pain, the smallest signs often mattered most. A child learning to measure time by disappointment. A father disappearing because poverty had become more humiliating than hunger. A mother too tired to force honesty, because survival was already taking everything she had left. Elena never told many people the full story after that. She did not need to. Caleb knew. Ruby knew. Marissa had known before she died. That was enough. Still, on some late nights, when the oncology floor went silent and the elevator doors opened onto nobody, Elena found herself glancing at the blue chair and thinking of all the adults in the world who call children resilient when what they really mean is they had no choice. And if anyone had asked her what hurt Ruby most, Elena would not have said the hospital, or the money, or even the waiting itself. She would have said this: being left alone inside a truth nobody around her was brave enough to say out loud. That, more than illness, was what made the chair by the window feel haunted long after it was empty. If this story stayed with you, leave a like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, what do you think hurts more, being abandoned, or realizing the adult you trust is falling apart right in front of you?